Hi, this is Rhonda. Welcome to my YouTube channel. The topic of conversation today is the second open forum meeting for the proposed reallocation of the 1.5 cent sales and use tax for the city of Glenwood, Arkansas. I have a few questions and a few comments, and I'm going to share those with you. Just a reminder, this discussion is my own personal opinion. I'm not steered either way by anyone. So if you haven't seen my first two YouTube videos about the proposed tax, I'll place the link to those videos below for you to take a look at. The first gives a general explanation of the proposed reallocation of the tax, and the second video, just my views and the pros and cons of the tax. So I'm going to be looking down at my notes every now and then just so I stay on track. And I will share these notes on whatever Facebook page I happen to post the link to this video on. So again, this is just my opinion. This proposed tax issue has been rushed. And I know that there's been two other meetings and then another one scheduled on next Monday, April 24th, but somehow I just feel rushed. Like I'm being sold on something. I'm just getting tidbits of information one meeting at a time and really only getting answers for the questions that I'm directly asking and not the entire story. In fact, one of the councilmen during both of the two past meetings, it was mentioned both meetings, repeatedly asked how they, the council, could market this and how they could sell this to the citizens of Glenwood. You shouldn't have to sell anything. You should explain, educate, inform the citizens so they can come to their own conclusions and decisions. So last week, the second public forum or open Q&A meeting was held. And again, I still have some questions. And I'm going to admit, this is driving me crazy. It truly is. At the meeting, the public was given a little bit more information, which in turn created additional questions for me. I do feel that some of the questions shouldn't have to be asked. They should be presented initially without the questions having to be asked. And mainly because this is uncharted territory for some. And when you're learning and hearing about something like this for the first time, you just don't know what to ask. You don't know what you don't know. So there's one more public forum question and answer meeting scheduled for May 24th, 6 p.m. at Glenwood City Hall. And you'll hear me say that date several times because that's just how important it is. It's really important. So the guests that were in attendance at the meeting last week included Michael Moyers and Sarah Giamo with the Friday Law Firm, and they represent the city of Glenwood in this bond issue. Andy Franks with A.L. Franks Engineering, and now I understand that that relationship has been long-standing, and he's the city engineer. And Jason Hawesclaw with Stevens Public Finance. We didn't hear much from the speakers in the last meeting, but we heard much from Mayor Plyler and Councilman Moore. I want you to understand that the proposed tax will not automatically be placed on the ballot for the citizens to vote. It's not a sure thing. It can only be placed on the ballot by ordinance. That is the reason for these public meetings. It's a requirement for an ordinance. 3 meetings. Third one's next week. The meeting for the actual election ordinance vote has been scheduled for May 17th, 2023, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. This is an important meeting. At this meeting, there will have to be a motion made and a second by members of the City Council to adopt the election ordinance and to have that proposed reallocation tax on the ballot. After the motion's made and then there's a second, then it'll go to the vote by the council. A majority vote is needed. So it's not even a sure thing that this tax proposal will go as far as to even get to the voters. Our council can vote yes or no. If they vote yes, we'll have an election and you, the voters, decide. If no, then it's pretty much a dead issue. It's done. This undoubtedly is a very important vote for our elected and appointed officials. Let them hear your point of view. This is their responsibility, their job. They represent you. The council should, and I believe that they will, consider what is best for Glenwood. And then if it actually goes to the voters should vote and consider what's best for Glenwood. Right now, what you can do is reach out to your council members. Your council members are Alan Moore, Chris Fuller, Carrie Brady, and Jimmy Clark. Reach out to them and express your point of view. You know where to contact them. They represent you. They are going to cast a vote as to whether or not this reallocation of tax goes to a special election. So they can vote yes or no. And by the way, Mayor Plyler may have a deciding vote in the event of a tie, but otherwise he doesn't have a vote in this. Your council votes. So let's just back up and refresh. This reallocation tax would not increase the current sales tax of 1.5%. It would refund or pay off the 2004 and the 2006 bond. And then it will ask for the voters' approval for a new bond. That new bond will include the payoff or refund of those two bonds. It will include a $4 million bond of new monies for construction and the cost of issuance that bond. Now, issuance of that bond, the cost of that is a little bit over $400,000. Remember, that's the cost of doing business. That's a total of $9,305,000 for a 30-year term. Again, that's a lot of money. So here goes for a brief overview of my questions asked at last Monday's meeting and after a little research that I did on my own after the meeting. Interest rates. So I asked about the interest rates on the proposed bonds. I asked if they would be higher than the 2004 and the 2006 bonds. So basically I want to know, is the interest going to be higher for this new bond? Mayor Plyler must have watched my video because he addressed my questions about the interest rates right on the onset of this meeting. Mayor Plyler said that the interest rates wouldn't be higher. And if you want to go back to that open forum meeting, it's at minute mark 3.28. After I researched, yes, the interest rate will be higher on the new bond. So the 2004 bond that we currently have is at a fixed rate of 2.50% with a 1% service charge for a total of 3.5%. The 2006 bond is at 2.25 with a 1% service charge for a total of 3.25. Now, there's no way that we can predict what the interest rate's going to be because this all isn't going to happen until after the vote, and that would come in August. So we don't know what the interest rate will be. We don't have a crystal ball. But my research came up with today's rate. In today's rate, the cost would be 4.55% for a 30-year repayment term. So the cost to borrow the money will cost more. And we're borrowing a lot more money. That's a lot of money. I did ask if the city could earn interest off of bond monies. So let's say if we got the bond monies, the proceeds came in, but we had them in our bank account ready to pay a contractor, say, we could earn interest. And the answer is yes, we can earn interest. This is a good thing. We can earn interest off that money. It's I want to just say this. When we earn interest off of it, it's in accordance with any kind of laws that they have for municipalities. I think there's a cap on it, something like that. But the fact is we can earn interest. Some is better than none. Okay. So that's number one, interest rates. They're going to be higher. The second one I have is that the water, and I just put water bond or sewer bond in general. There are no bids to speak of. And although I do believe Mayor Plyler and Mr. Franks, know what needs to be done, it doesn't appear very well organized. And that's to me. It doesn't appear organized at all. So the bonds will be a percentage dedicated to water and a percentage dedicated to sewer, not to exceed a certain amount. So the way I understand it is that the city can state an amount on the ballot and then an amount not to exceed. So they can take some of those proceeds and start, making payments on those. If they don't need them all, they can go back and take another draw. Okay? And I'm calling it a draw. They probably call it something different. But what they mentioned in the meeting last week was that if they do that, the city's subject to more closing cost. So if you take that second draw or another draw off of that amount, then there's going to be more charges associated with it. Okay. So, and right now, we really don't know how much the city needs. There's still not, estimates or bids that I'm aware of. And the grants hadn't been awarded yet. We don't know how much money we're going to get, if we get anything. So I guess it's still the unknown for me, and maybe I need to have some clarity on that, but those are just my comments on the sewer and water bond in general. So number 3, Act 605, and we did talk about that. Basically, it requires oversight of retail water providers. There's going to be a rate study performed, basically to make sure that the water and sewer departments are solvent. Is the city charging enough for water and sewer so they can pay the bills, the maintenance and operations? So if it's determined that they're not, then there's going to be a mandatory rate increase imposed. So that would be effective July 1st, 2026, based upon the number of citizens in Glenwood. However, Act 605 says that a rate study has to be done prior to a major development project. This seems like a major development project in the works. I'm not sure if it's considered that, but what might happen is we may be subject to that rate study prior to 2026 if this is indeed a major development project. Okay, so that rate study provider is a provider that's approved by the Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources Division. And they have unbiased providers, and I'm sure they go through an approval process with them. So although the sales tax will not change, the city is taking on more debt. Okay, so this is my question. Is the debt of the bond, debt service, being paid by a sales tax a factor in the rate study? So let me read you this out of Act 605. It states that the rate study shall include financing expenses, including but not limited to debt service. And this is what Stevens Public Finance refers to the bond in its handouts. The bond issuing cost, these are the fees associated with getting the bond, the $400,000 figure, and commercial paper fees. And then it refers to non-rate revenue. So what I just listed are items that are included in the rate study. Okay, so it was not really clear to me if that debt is being paid by sales tax, if it actually can be included in the rate study. Because if it's included in the rate study, that's a lot of money and it kind of throws the ratio off. And there will be a rate increase. That's kind of how I'm thinking. So what I did was I reached out to the Department of Agriculture, and I'm going to read you what was said to me. Generally speaking, the rate study does take into account debt from whatever form it may be in. And it also takes into account revenues that are not derived from rates paid by customers, which can include tax revenues dedicated to the system. Now, I'm not an attorney. Unless there's some sort of loophole in this Act 605, the way I'm reading it and the way that the Department of Agriculture tells me is that it's going to be included in the rate study, it meaning the debt. So that debt would be included in the rate study. Okay. So to me, if you include this debt, then the rates currently charged aren't going to be adequate to cover the debt. And this is a question that I'll ask at the next meeting. And let me recap my question. Is the debt service paid for by a sales tax allocated to the repayment of the sewer and water bond allowed to be excluded from the rate study? And really, I don't want a yes or no. I want to know where I can find that exclusion. I want to know that this debt is excluded from the study, regardless of how it's paid. And it's being paid through a sales tax. So unless there's some sort of loophole for that, and that's my term, loophole, I want to see that. I want to see it. Okay, so the next topic are meeting dates. So if you listen to the audio of the open forum meeting last Monday, go all the way to the end. There was mention of a meeting scheduled on May 16th for the council vote. So they were a little bit premature in scheduling this meeting, as Glenwood won't know for the results of the grant that they applied for water and sewer until the 17th. So we may receive one or the other grant or more, likely not both, but we don't know the amounts. We don't know what percentage of a match the city of Glenwood would have to do. We don't know what amounts to reflect on the ballot. You know, just too many unanswered questions there. So the council tossed around several dates and landed on a date of Wednesday, May 17th, 6 p.m. This is the very evening that they know the results of the grant. And it's a little bit quick for me. You find out results the morning of, and then that afternoon the council's expected to vote on this. Wednesday is right in the middle of the week. It's church night for most, and people have other obligations and they may not attend. And listening to the audio, we don't have a commitment from all the council members that they're actually going to attend this meeting. Since the amounts are unknown and the meeting to hold the vote is that very evening, will the council be notified of the results prior to the meeting so that they can review prior to the vote? Will the public be notified? This just doesn't give enough time for the public to speak with and convey their thoughts to the council that will be casting their vote on whether or not it even goes to the ballot. Question: what happens if a grant is not received on either water or sewer? What are we going to do then? Do we still try to pass this ordinance for this special election and then not have enough money to finish the project because we didn't get a grant to go along with this money? It's just too many unknowns. Too many unknowns. So the last question that I have is, how much is this special election going to cost the city? It's my understanding that these special elections do cost the city. I want to know about how much. How much is it going to cost? So let me remind you that these are my own personal opinions and comments as I see them. I want to remind you again that next Monday at City Hall, April 24th, 6 p.m., there will be another public forum question and answer meeting, and I urge you to come. I urge you to come to that meeting. Remember, knowledge is power. Have a great rest of your evening, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. You can do that below. And again, have a nice evening. Peace.